Welcome back. Today we're going to take the task on replacing the liner in this deep water culture bed. These videos are brought to you by our Patreon contributors. Our top contributors are aquaponics.ai, growpockets.com, trueaquaponics.com, and glassbottleoutlet.com. Thanks for your support. Unfortunately, this liner has come to the end of its usefulness. The batch that I got probably was defective right off the bat. The UV has essentially destroyed this, and my opinion is it should have lasted a little bit longer. And I actually did talk to the liner manufacturer, and they sold me a new liner that does have the UV protection in it, and they prorated it a little bit. I got a little discount on it for it not lasting as long as it should have. I think this was about 3.5 years. They claim it was supposed to be at least 3 years, which technically I got, but it's been degrading for the last 1.5 years or so that I've noticed. I've just let it go a little bit too long. So let me show you what we need to do, and then we'll get at it. Anywhere that has direct exposure to the light, you can see the UV has degraded the outer layer of plastic, and it's just become quite brittle. And you can see the inner part of the liner with the reinforcement strings, and then the last layer. So in most spots, the liner is not leaking. If we take off the clip where this one was, the liner of course is still perfectly good because the clip has protected it from the UV. Even it should never have degraded this quickly because the outer plastic on the greenhouse is UV protected, so that blocks a lot of it. Here's another section that's just cracked, and the reinforcement is holding it together. Now, I've had liner that I bought from the same company that has been outdoors in direct sunlight that's older than this, and it still is in great condition. So that's why this was just a bad batch, I think. Taking a look underneath the edge, the part that's holding back the water is in pretty good shape. People originally were very concerned that this was going to get kicked and punctured, but I haven't had any issues with that, especially by having this extra skirt down here. I think next time I'll actually cut it a little bit longer and maybe attach it better. What's really interesting is down in this spot where there's little pieces of styrofoam from the base. And so what it looks like is every so often a mouse will get down underneath here and chew through the styrofoam, probably to stay warm during the winter. So it'll be interesting to see once we get all this apart what they're doing under there, and hopefully they haven't tried gnawing through the liner. Another spot that looks real bad is at the corners. You can see this just is buckling apart, and this has cracked enough where there is some water leaking out. You can see some algae here, so up in here, really now it's above the water line, there's some kind of a pinhole where it was just sort of dripping out. I have another spot over here by the pump and water heater too that has slowly been leaking out, and this hole is now above the water line, so it stopped dripping. You can see it's a little wet in here, and for the most part there's nothing coming out of it. But there is still some place in here that there's a hole leaking out a lot of water. Before winter starts, I will usually stop the water from auto topping off the beds, and the water level is usually right at the top of this intake. So I've lost about 3 inches of water in here, and so somewhere in here I probably have a leak, because usually during the winter I don't lose any water because there's just no plants in here and everything's covered nicely. So I've lost about that 3 inches. That equates to about 450 gallons a month that I'm losing out of the system. So there's a leak in here somewhere, so we need to find that. Interestingly enough, during the summer with all the plants in here, my top off is barely that much. So all my loss right now is through a leak somewhere. So we're gonna try to hunt that down too while we have all the liner out. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean out the beds. Now this bed has several hundred strawberry plants in it that I just let overwinter in here. It's cold enough and dark enough where they just go dormant. These are a June bearing variety, so they're starting to just come back now. So I got to pull all these out, clean off anything that died during the winter, and get the rafts out of here. The majorities are first year runners that I let grow into these beds from the middle beds over here, and I let the runners come in and just root themselves right into the holes in the deep water culture beds. So these plants are still stuck on with their little umbilical cords. This is it here. We could just clean off the dead stuff, and then this will be ready for planting. I'll do it next week. My liner will be in a couple of days, so I just want to get the beds prepped and ready to go and make sure that these plants are going to be ready for action right after I get the beds in. A lot of these still have their grow grips on them when I stuck them into there. This one's just starting to blossom, so we're going to pull those off. Let that energy stay in the plant instead of going into the blossoms. This is the bottom of the raft, and you can see that strawberry roots will show no mercy to the styrofoam, and they will grow right through it without any issues. So you really don't want to put these in rafts that you care a lot about, because they'll just wreck them eventually. It's taken me about 6 hours to get through all these strawberry plants, picking through them, cleaning them up, getting them ready for the season. Pretty mindless work, but I thought of a better way to hold these into the deep water culture bed, so we'll do that in another video and show you my ideas on that. I'm going to attempt to save some of the water out of the bed and put it into this other tank that I have. I haven't used it yet, so it's empty. So I'm just going to siphon some of the water from the fish tank into here. The deep water culture bed is the lowest point in the system, so that has the pump on it, so it'll pump through the system into this, and then it'll just siphon into here. So it should drain out some of the water out of that bed. The trick is getting the siphon to start with this nice large pipe. Piece of cake. This is the outlet to the deep water culture bed, and the pump's just right over there off camera. He used to just have the opening here, and I was afraid as the water level started getting deeper, it'd start sucking air in into the pipe. So I stuck this 90-degree elbow onto the end of the pipe, and it's about a ½ an inch off the bottom of the bed. And I actually might keep this here because I've noticed that the debris that accumulates on the bottom is getting sucked up into it. Now that is going directly into the fish tank, but it will work its way through and then end up in the settling filter. So this might be a good way to help remove some of the debris that collects in the bottom of the bed, as it will slowly work its way down to this end. While I'm waiting for the bed to drain out, I might as well take all my rafts out, get all this other debris out of here. Somewhere in here there's also a koi, at least one, that's been eating at my roots last summer. So we'll finally be able to track it down and get it out of here. The filling of my spare tank is going well. The water in the fish tank is a little bit low, mainly because it's siphoning out faster than I'm pumping in. Once two levels equal out, they'll start filling up and we'll be back to normal again. I'm not sure what happened to my audio here, but I must have said something about dropping in a sump pump to sump out the rest of the water. And then I started taking the clips off the liner while I waited for everything to drain out. I dug a small hole underneath the bed just to sink the sump pump a little bit deeper in the ground. These things only can pump down to about 2 inches before they start sucking up air. So by setting it in this hole, it will allow them to get more of the water out of the bed. I was just gonna throw the liner away, and then I posted this on social media to see if anybody wanted a 100-foot long slip and slide, and a bunch of people did. So I'm just gonna clean it out instead of cutting it up, and they're gonna come pick it up in the next couple of days. So at least this will get a second life. This pump's not good enough to deal with the solids that are in the remaining water, so we're doing this the old-fashioned way now. Normally I don't like to film while it's raining. It just started pouring out because you usually can't hear over the rain hitting the plastic. But I need to get this done today so I can get water circulating in it again. I can let the fish go for a couple of days without fresh water because this water's so cold and they really aren't eating anything. But I'd like to get things going again here. Might as well leave these out in the rain for the new owners so that they can get washed off a little bit. A while back I made up this wrench, if you want to call it that, for using on these large bulkhead fittings because I got tired of wrestling them on by hand. It actually works pretty well. On the inside part of the fitting, that threads into the piping, I made up this piece of iron that has some notches in it, and that goes right into these holes right here. Oops, if I can get it right. And that just allows you to turn it without having to try to grab onto it with your hands also. When I originally installed this, I have a backer board on here that the bulkhead fitting is used to hold against. I had a lot of people give me flack about using this particle board wood on the back side. This is Advantech decking, which they use some type of a resin in there, so this stuff won't rot out. But let's pull this back and see how it looks back there. Looks like it's still new. A little bit of water got in here at some point, but that's fairly fresh. Usually if it gets really bad, you'll get a little mold or something in there, but this looks like it's brand new still. I haven't seen any evidence of the mice eating through the bottom of the liner. Normally you would see areas of staining where the water was leaking through, and then the iron in that water would stain the foam. But this is all looking pretty good. So for the most part, the mice didn't bother the liner at all. I think most of my leaking came from the sides where the UV had deteriorated it and I was starting to get some cracks down the sides. This is that spot where there was some foam debris out here where I'm assuming the mice got under it. So let's see what's under here. Actually, there's nothing there. Looks like they must have started digging here and then gave up. So I guess they're not getting underneath this. Just want to do a little cleaning of these. Make sure there's no stones on them. I don't want them puncturing into the liner. Liner's pretty tough, but just don't want to take that risk. I wasn't planning on going into a lot of detail on doing the actual liner install. I think I covered it fairly well when I installed it originally. So I'm just going to sort of show some highlights from it this time around. So I'll leave a link to that video somewhere, probably in the description or up above, and that way you can watch how these are installed in a little bit more detail. So I'm just going to whip through this. The sun will be setting in a couple hours, so I really want to get this up and running before it gets dark tonight. Alright, we'll just throw the pump into here and start pumping out all the reserved water. And then on this side, we'll make up the rest with our well water. Now that the system's mostly filled back up again, I'm going to throw in my blank rafts here just to act as a cover, help keep the algae under control. We have a lot of iron in our well water. This has settled out for a few days. You can see it just settles down to the bottom. It'll be interesting to see what a water test shows up for how much iron we actually have in here. So this is almost full. I had it about 3/4 full. And I came out one morning and found it less than half. So I actually thought I had a leak in the liner. So I spent a lot of time looking around for wet spots and whatnot. Couldn't find anything. And then come to find out, I had left my hose in here from filling it, and I had turned off the faucet. And normally if you just turn off a faucet, it's not a big deal. But this is a frost-free hydrant that I use. And so that hydrant auto flushes the water out of itself. So this started back-feeding water and siphoning water through the hydrant into the dry well that's at the bottom of it. So I lost a couple thousand gallons because of that. So I have to remember to pull the hose out if I'm not filling it up. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.